Captain Lee Dong-woo sat in his old mining ship called Seoul Pride and stared out at the empty space around him. The ship was not pretty to look at, with rust spots covering most of the metal walls and wires hanging loose from the ceiling like dead snakes. The smell inside was a mix of unwashed clothes, old food, and engine oil that had been burning for too long. This was what humans called their finest deep space mining operation, which really showed how new they were to space travel Dong. Wu had been captain of this floating junk pile for 3 years now, and he was getting tired of it. Every day was the same thing. Wake up, eat something that barely counted as food, check the mining equipment, and hope nothing exploded. The 12. People on his crew were good workers, but they were all just as tired and dirty as he was. None of them had signed up to be space heroes. They just wanted to make enough money to go back home to Earth and never see another asteroid again. His second in command was Park So-jin, and she was currently under the main control panel trying to fix their communication system with nothing but a rusty wrench and a lot of bad words. She was covered in grease from head to toe, and her black hair was tied back with what looked like electrical wire. So Jin was the smartest person on the ship when it came to making broken things work again, but even she could not perform miracles with the junk they had been given. The navigation officer Kim Tae-ho was sitting at his station eating instant noodles straight from the container like it was a fancy meal. He had been doing this job for 2 years and had learned not to expect much from life in space. The pay was decent, but everything else about deep. Space mining was boring dangerous, or both Tae-ho spent most of his time reading old books on his tablet and dreaming about getting a job on one of those nice passenger ships that flew between Earth and the Moon. Their engineer Choi Min-ho was somewhere in the engine room making loud noises as he fought with machinery that should have been retired 10 years ago. Min-ho was the kind of person who could make anything work at least temporarily, but he was always complaining about the poor quality of their equipment. He had a theory that their ship had been built by people who had never actually seen space before and just guessed about what might be needed. The rest of the crew were scattered around the ship doing various jobs that needed to be done. Lee Soo-min was trying to fix the water recycling system, which had been making strange sounds for weeks. Yang Ho-seok was supposed to be monitoring their mining robots, but he was actually taking a nap in his bunk. Park Ji-woo was checking their communication equipment and hoping they would not lose contact with Earth again like they had last month. None of them knew that they were about to become the most famous humans in galactic history for all the wrong reasons. They had no idea that intelligent aliens existed, much less that there was a huge galactic civilization with rules and customs and proper ways of doing things. They thought humans were alone in the universe, except for some bacteria they had found on Mars a few years ago. Far away from their small, dirty ship, something incredible was happening. The most important vessel in the known galaxy was traveling through space on a mission that would change the history of 300 worlds. This ship belonged to Emperor Vel-Toran, who ruled more star systems than humans had even discovered yet. The Emperor was traveling to the most important peace meeting in 1,000 years, where 2 massive alien empires would finally stop fighting each other. The royal ship was everything that Seoul Pride was not. It was huge and beautiful, with white metal that seemed to glow from within. Energy shields surrounded it that could stop entire planets from crashing into it. The technology on board could reshape matter, change the laws of physics in small areas, and travel faster than light without breaking anything. The ship carried ambassadors from 50 different alien species, all wearing their finest clothes and jewelry for the historic occasion. Emperor Vel-Toran himself was preparing for the ceremony in his royal chambers. He had been studying the ancient diplomatic languages for months and practicing the formal gestures that would be needed for the peace treaty. The emperor took his responsibilities very seriously, because one wrong word or gesture could start another 1,000 years of war. His advisors had spent years planning every detail of this meeting. The royal ship was scheduled to arrive at the peace conference in exactly 6 hours. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. The Emperor had no way of knowing that his ship was about to encounter a small human vessel that would turn his carefully planned diplomatic mission into the most embarrassing moment of his very long life back. On Soul Pride, Captain Dong Wu was starting to get worried about their position. They had been mining the same asteroid field for 6 months and were running low on supplies. The communication system was barely working. The food was getting worse. Every day, and several crew members had been complaining about strange noises coming from different parts of the ship. He was starting to think they should head back toward Earth, even though they had not collected as much valuable material as their company-wanted. Kim Tae-ho suddenly looked up from his noodles and stared at his navigation screen. Something was showing up on their sensors. Something much bigger than an asteroid and moving much faster than any space rock ever could. The reading was so strange that he thought his equipment might be broken again, but the signal kept getting stronger and clearer. "Captain, this is weird," Tae-ho called out while still staring at his screen. "There is something really big coming toward us, and it does not look like anything I have ever seen before." Dong Wu walked over to look at the navigation display and saw what Tae-ho was talking about. The object was massive, much larger than their entire mining station back on Earth, and it was definitely not natural. Whatever it was had been built by someone with technology far beyond anything humans had ever created. So Jin crawled out from under the control panel with grease on her face and a confused expression. "What are you two looking at?" she asked while wiping her hands on her already dirty coveralls. "We are about to have visitors," Dongwu said quietly, "and I do not think they are from around here." None of them realized that they were about to make first contact between humanity and Galactic. Civilization, while covered in engine oil, eating cheap noodles, and wearing clothes that had not been washed in weeks. They had no idea that their next few decisions would be remembered and studied by alien historians for centuries to come. The Royal ship appeared on their view screen like a golden palace floating in the darkness of space. The massive royal ship appeared next to Soul Pride like a magnificent golden palace floating beside a broken-down garbage truck. The size difference was so extreme that the human ship looked like a tiny insect crawling next to a sleeping giant. Every surface of the alien vessel seemed to glow with its own inner light, and strange symbols moved across its hull like living things. The technology on display was so advanced that it might as well have been magic to the humans watching Emperor. Veltoran stood on his royal bridge surrounded by the finest technology in the galaxy and the most important people from dozens of different worlds. He was tall and elegant with 4 eyes that could see across multiple dimensions and skin that changed color based on his emotional state. Right now, his skin was showing the deep purple of formal ceremony because he believed he was about to conduct the first diplomatic contact with a new species. The Emperor wore robes made from fabric that existed in 7 dimensions and a crown that contained the preserved light of 3 different stars. His voice carried the authority of someone who had ruled wisely for over 300 years, and when he spoke, entire star systems listened with respect. He had been preparing for this moment since his sensors first detected the unknown vessel. The royal bridge was filled with ambassadors from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. There were beings made of living crystal who communicated through harmonious music and creatures that looked like floating jellyfish, but could solve mathematical problems that would break human computers. Dignified aliens with too many arms wore ceremonial robes covered in awards and honors, while others, that resembled walking flowers, carried ancient staffs of diplomatic office. Emperor Veltoran activated the communication system using the most formal and ancient language reserved only for the most important occasions. This was the language used to end wars, declare peace between empires, and welcome new species into the galactic community. He spoke each word carefully, with perfect pronunciation, and exactly the right tone to show respect for what he believed was another advanced civilization. "Greetings, unknown vessel. I am Emperor Vel-Toran, ruler of the Central Worlds, guardian of the sacred peace, master of the eternal flame. We request formal introduction, according to Galactic protocol. The translation systems worked perfectly, converting the Emperor's formal speech into something the humans could understand. Unfortunately, Captain Lee Dong-woo was having the worst day of his life. The toilet had been broken for 3 weeks, the coffee machine had exploded yesterday, and Park. So Jin had just informed him that their oxygen recycling system was making sounds that probably meant they were all going to die. Soon Dong-woo was sitting in his captain chair wearing a stained undershirt and pants that had holes in both knees. He had not shaved in a week, and his hair looked like he had been sleeping in a wind tunnel. When the communication came through, he was trying to eat something that was supposed to be eggs, but looked more like yellow plastic. "Yeah, what do you want?" Dong-woo replied without even bothering to look at the camera. "We are busy here." The entire royal bridge fell into shocked silence. Ambassadors from dozens of species made whatever noise their kind made when extremely surprised. Some gasped through multiple breathing holes. Others changed colors dramatically, and a few simply fell over in disbelief. Nobody in the recorded history of galactic civilization had ever spoken to Emperor Vel-Toran with such casual disrespect. The royal advisor, who looked like a cross between a peacock and a philosophy professor, actually fainted and had to be caught by 2 other officials. The military advisor immediately started taking notes because he thought this might be some kind of psychological warfare technique. The diplomatic corps began, whispering among themselves, trying to figure out if this was an insult or perhaps some kind of advanced humor they did not understand. But the situation was about to get much, much worse. Engineer Choi Min-ho chose that exact moment to walk past the communication console while fighting with a stubborn wrench that had been giving him trouble all morning. When the wrench finally came loose, he let out a stream of creative Korean profanity that would have made a Seoul taxi driver stand up and applaud. The universal translator was doing its job perfectly. It took every single curse word and converted it into the royal language with complete accuracy and formal grammar. Min-ho had just announced to the most dignified gathering in Galactic history that the wrench was the illegitimate offspring of a diseased space worm and a malfunctioning waste disposal unit. And furthermore, the translator announced in perfectly proper royal language, this mechanical device appears to have descended from a long line of broken tools, each more useless than the last. Emperor Vel-Toran's eyes widened in shock. His skin changed from formal purple to confused orange as he tried to process what he had just heard. The royal translator checked and double-checked the systems, but everything was working perfectly. These beings were genuinely speaking this way to him. The peace treaty delegation sat in stunned silence. They had come here to witness the Emperor sign the most important document in galactic history, and instead they were watching what appeared to be humanity's formal introduction to civilization. The aliens began taking careful notes because they assumed this was how all humans communicated. Did that primitive being just insult the sacred technology of the royal vessel, whispered one ambassador who looked like a walking tree covered in jewelry. I believe, said another who resembled a giant butterfly with too many wings. They just declared philosophical war on the concept of functional machinery. The Emperor tried to maintain his composure, but his royal training had never prepared him for anything like this. In galactic society, meeting an emperor required months of preparation, formal ceremonies, ritual purification, and learning, at least 50 different ways to bow respectfully. Most species spent years just learning the proper greeting words. His chief translator was frantically checking all the equipment, looking for some malfunction that could explain what was happening. The translator was a nervous creature with too many tentacles, and right now all of those tentacles were shaking with anxiety. Your Majesty, the translator reported in a worried voice, the translation systems are functioning perfectly. These beings appear to be genuinely this informal in their communication style. Impossible, declared the royal advisor, who had recovered from fainting but now looked ready to faint again. No civilized species in the galaxy behaves this way. Perhaps they are suffering from some kind of mental disease that affects their ability to show proper respect. The Emperor began to wonder if he was dealing with the most primitive species ever discovered, or perhaps the most advanced beings in the universe who had moved beyond the need for formal social customs. Either way, he was certain that this first contact was not going according to any protocol ever written. Meanwhile, back on Sol, Pride, nobody realized anything was wrong. They thought they were just dealing with another annoying inspection from some government officials who had too much time and too many fancy uniforms. Captain Dong-Wu was starting to get annoyed because these people were interrupting his crew's work schedule. The royal ship continued to hover next to Sol Pride like a golden god waiting patiently next to a broken lawnmower. Back on the human mining ship, nobody had any idea that they were making history in the worst possible way. Captain Lee Dong-Wu was now fully committed to what he thought was just another annoying encounter with space bureaucrats. In his 3 years of deep space mining, he had dealt with plenty of officials who loved to show off their fancy ships and demand to see permits and licenses. "Look, Space Emperor," or whatever Dong-Wu said while opening a can of processed meat that was probably older than some of the crew members. "Unless you are buying rare metals, we are not interested. We have got work to do and quotas to meet." He took a big bite of the questionable meat and made a face that suggested it tasted exactly as bad as it looked. The sound of his chewing was picked up perfectly by their communication system and broadcast to the most refined royal court in galactic civilization. Emperor Veltoran had spent 300 years mastering the art of diplomatic conversation. He knew 47 different languages, could conduct negotiations that lasted for decades, and had personally ended 6 major wars through careful use of words and gestures. Never in his long life had anyone treated him like a door-to-door salesperson. The Emperor's skin shifted from confused orange to deeply offended red, while his 4 eyes blinked in sequence as his brain tried to process this unprecedented situation. His royal robes, which contained technology that could analyze the molecular structure of distant stars, seemed to shimmer with his emotional distress. His chief translator was now frantically running diagnostic tests on every piece of equipment on the bridge. The poor creature was convinced that something must be wrong with their systems, because no species in the recorded history of the galaxy had ever been this casual when meeting the galactic throne for the first time. "Your Majesty," the translator reported while 3 of his tentacles typed on different computer keyboards. Simultaneously, all translation and communication systems are functioning at optimal levels. These humans appear to be authentically this informal in their social interactions. The royal advisor, who had managed to stay conscious this time, was taking detailed notes with a writing instrument that captured not just words, but also emotional resonances and dimensional fluctuations. He was documenting what he believed might be the strangest first contact in galactic history. Perhaps these beings are so advanced that they have moved beyond the need for traditional social customs, he suggested. Hopefully. Maybe their casual attitude represents a higher form of consciousness that we simply do not understand. Yet, or suggested the military advisor, grimly, they could be the most primitive and dangerous species we have ever encountered. Their lack of respect might indicate aggressive tendencies that could threaten galactic stability. Meanwhile, Park. So Jin had decided to join the conversation. She crawled out from under the control panel, where she had been trying to convince their communication system to work properly for more than 5 minutes at a time. Her coveralls were now completely covered in grease, and she had somehow managed to get engine oil in her hair. "Hey, nice ship you got there," she said, while eating a sandwich that consisted mainly of mystery meat and hope. "Must cost a fortune to keep all that pretty metal clean. Our bucket here runs on duct tape, prayers, and the occasional miracle." She gestured around at their ship interior, where exposed wires hung from the ceiling like technological spaghetti, and where several panels were held in place with actual duct tape that had been painted over so many times it looked like modern art. The royal court interpreted her words as a complex philosophical metaphor about the relationship between material wealth and spiritual fulfillment. Scholars throughout the galaxy would spend the next 50 years analyzing the deep meaning hidden in the phrase duct tape prayers and the occasional miracle. Their leader speaks in abstract concepts, whispered one ambassador who looked like a walking crystal formation covered in tiny lights. These humans must possess incredible wisdom to communicate in such layered metaphors. Either that, muttered another ambassador who resembled a floating jellyfish with too many tentacles. They are completely insane, and we are witnessing the first contact between civilization and chaos. The emperor found himself oddly fascinated by these strange beings. They seemed to combine absolute confidence with complete honesty in a way that no other species had ever demonstrated. Most civilizations try to present their best face when meeting the Galactic throne, but these humans appeared to be showing him exactly who they were without any pretense or preparation. Back on Sol Pride, Kim Tae-ho had finished his instant noodles and was now trying to be helpful by offering what he considered basic space traveler hospitality. He disappeared from view for a moment and returned carrying a bottle of clear liquid that definitely had not come from their official supplies. "Hey, you guys want to share a drink?" he called out while holding up the bottle. "This stuff will put hair on your chest, assuming you have chests and hair and the ability to grow hair on your chests." The Emperor stared at the bottle in complete bewilderment. In his culture, sharing alcoholic beverages was reserved for the most sacred ceremonies, and was only performed after years of ritual preparation and spiritual purification. The casual way this human offered to share drinks was either the most insulting gesture possible or represented a level of spiritual advancement that transcended normal social boundaries. "They offer the sacred liquid of bonding," announced the royal advisor, who was now writing so fast that smoke was rising from his writing instrument. "This species approaches the divine mysteries of social connection with remarkable directness," or suggested a paranoid military officer. "They are attempting to poison the royal court as part of an elaborate assassination plot." The situation became even more confusing when Lee Soo-min wandered into camera view. She was the ship mechanic and was currently wearing only her underwear, a tool belt, and the expression of mild confusion. She was covered in engine oil from head to toe and was carrying what appeared to be an important piece of their life support. "System Captain," she called out while examining the mysterious piece of equipment. "The air scrubber is making that weird noise again." "You want me to hit it with the hammer, or should we try talking to it first?" "Hit it, Dong-woo," replied without any hesitation at all. "If that does not work, we can try reasoning with it, but I have never seen reasoning work on broken machinery." The royal court watched in fascination as Soo-min disappeared off-screen, followed immediately by loud banging sounds and what appeared to be a one-sided argument between a human and a piece of mechanical equipment. Her colorful commentary about the air scrubber ancestry and personal habits was being perfectly translated into formal royal language. The Emperor was beginning to suspect that he was dealing with a species that had developed a completely unique relationship with technology. Kim Tae-ho was still holding his bottle of questionable alcohol and genuinely thought he was being polite by offering to share drinks with their unexpected visitors. He had been raised to believe that hospitality was important even in space, and especially when meeting new people who seemed important enough to own incredibly fancy ships. "Come on," he insisted while waving the bottle at the camera. "Do not be shy. This is good stuff, real Korean soju, not that synthetic garbage they serve on the Mars colonies. It will either cure what ails you or make you forget you were ever sick in the first place, Emperor." Veltoran stared at the bottle with growing confusion. In galactic civilization, the sharing of intoxicating beverages was surrounded by centuries of tradition and required extensive preparation. The liquid had to be blessed by spiritual leaders, tested by master chemists, and served in containers made from materials that had been purified in the heart of a star. The casual way. This human was offering alcohol was comparable to someone showing up at a royal wedding and asking if anyone wanted to share a hot dog. Most species would spend months learning the proper ceremonies before even thinking about offering drinks to an emperor. They offer the sacred liquid of bonding, the royal advisor announced, while frantically scribbling notes that were now smoking from the speed of his writing. This species appears to approach the most holy ceremonies with startling informality, or, suggested the military advisor who was becoming increasingly paranoid. This could be an elaborate test of our defenses. They may be attempting to lower our guard before launching some kind of surprise attack. The emperor was beginning to develop a headache, which was remarkable since his species had evolved beyond the need for most forms of physical discomfort. These humans seemed determined to violate every rule of diplomatic conduct ever written, and they were doing it with such genuine friendliness that it was impossible to take offense. The situation became significantly worse when Lee Soo-min reappeared on camera. She had apparently won her battle with the air scrubber, but now looked like she had been wrestling with machinery. That fought back. Her underwear was somehow even dirtier than before, and she was carrying a wrench that looked like it had been used as a weapon in some kind of mechanical war captain. She announced triumphantly, "I got the air scrubber working again, but I had to make some creative modifications to the original design. It should keep us breathing for at least another few days, assuming nothing else breaks down." "What kind of modifications?" asked Captain Dong-woo with the weary voice of someone who had learned not to expect good news. "Well," Soo-min said while wiping grease off her face and accidentally spreading it around, "instead I removed some parts that seemed unnecessary and added some parts from the coffee machine. The good news is we can breathe. The bad news is our air now smells like burnt coffee and machine oil." The royal court listened to this exchange in growing amazement. These humans were apparently keeping themselves alive through creative destruction of their own equipment. This was either the most advanced form of technological adaptation ever witnessed, or the most dangerous approach to life support in galactic history. Furthermore, the universal translator announced, as Soo-min continued her report, this atmospheric purification device appears to have been improved through the selective removal of components deemed superfluous by practical experience. The emperor found himself oddly impressed by what he perceived as humanity, unique philosophy of making things, work through controlled chaos. Most civilizations tried to build perfect systems that would never break down. These humans seemed to have accepted that everything would eventually break and had developed remarkable skills at fixing problems with whatever was available. Their approach to technology, the emperor mused to his advisors, suggests a species that has learned to thrive in conditions of constant uncertainty. They appear to view mechanical failure not as a disaster, but as an opportunity for creative problem-solving, or the military advisor suggested they are completely insane, and we are witnessing the slow-motion destruction of their own life support systems. Park Ji-woo had been listening to the conversation from his position at the communications console and decided that someone needed to try to make a good impression on their visitors. He had always considered himself the most diplomatic member of the crew, even though his idea of diplomacy usually involved buying drinks for people until they agreed with him. He put on his cleanest shirt, which still had several mysterious stains, and attempted to comb his hair using his reflection in a computer screen. Then he stepped in front of the camera with what he believed was an expression of professional competence. "Greetings, Emperor Vel-Taran," he said, while trying to stand up straight and look important. "I sincerely apologize for my colleagues' somewhat informal behavior. We are simple asteroid miners operating far from our home world, and we are not accustomed to meeting such distinguished visitors." Finally thought the emperor, a reasonable response from a species capable of basic diplomatic courtesy. But his relief was short-lived, because Ji-woo was just getting Started, if you are interested in acquiring rare minerals. He continued with growing enthusiasm. We currently have excellent prices on asteroid-grade titanium platinum derivatives and a particularly impressive collection of space rocks that would look fantastic in any royal garden or ceremonial display. The Emperor's jaw dropped open so far that his royal physician became concerned about possible dislocation. This human had just offered to sell him rocks, decorative stones, as if the ruler of 300 worlds was some kind of tourist looking for souvenirs. But the truly shocking part was how Ji Woo said it with genuine pride and excitement, as if he was offering the Emperor the greatest treasure in the known universe. He clearly believed that his collection of space debris was worthy of royal attention. Did he just attempt to conduct commercial business with the Emperor? Whispered one ambassador who looked like a walking tree decorated with precious gems, I believe, said another ambassador, who resembled a floating crystal formation. These humans view the Galactic throne as a potential customer rather than a spiritual and political authority. The military advisor was now taking notes so rapidly that his writing instrument was beginning to malfunction. This could represent a completely new form of psychological warfare, he muttered. They may be attempting to confuse us into a state of diplomatic paralysis. Meanwhile, the sound of mechanical repairs continued in the background as various crew members fought with different pieces of equipment. Su-min could be heard explaining to some unfortunate machine exactly what she thought of its performance and ancestry. Her creative commentary was being translated into increasingly elaborate, royal language. Moreover, the translator announced solemnly, "This atmospheric management system appears to descend from a distinguished lineage of malfunctioning devices, each contributing its own unique form of mechanical stubbornness to the family." Tradition Emperor Vel-Toran was beginning to realize that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Park Ji-woo was feeling quite proud of his diplomatic efforts and decided to expand on his sales presentation. He had always believed that good customer service was the key to success in any business, even asteroid mining in the middle of nowhere. He gestured enthusiastically toward what he imagined were the cargo holds of their ship. Our titanium has been naturally processed by cosmic radiation for millions of years, he explained with the confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea what he was talking about, which gives it unique properties that you simply cannot find in artificially manufactured metals. Plus, our platinum derivatives have been tested under the most extreme conditions possible. Actual space, the royal court listened in stunned fascination as this human attempted to convince Emperor Vel-Toran that space rocks were somehow superior to the advanced materials created by civilizations that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. The sheer audacity of trying to sell naturally occurring metals to beings who could create new elements was breathtaking. And our decorative space rocks, Ji Woo continued, while warming to his subject, each one has been personally selected for its aesthetic appeal and cosmic significance. These are not just ordinary asteroids. These are genuine pieces of the universe itself, each with its own unique history and character. Emperor Vel-Toran found himself caught between amusement and amazement. This human was describing chunks of space debris as if they were priceless artifacts. The enthusiasm was so genuine and the sales pitch so earnest that it was actually somewhat charming in its complete inappropriateness. The royal advisor was now writing with both hands, while his assistant took notes on his notes. These humans appear to possess a unique economic philosophy, he observed. They seem to believe that natural occurrence adds value rather than detracts from it. This could represent a completely different approach to material worth, or the military advisor suggested darkly. They are mocking us by pretending that random debris is worthy of imperial attention. This could be the most sophisticated insult ever delivered to the galactic throne. Meanwhile, the sounds of mechanical combat continued in the background as different crew members battled with various pieces of equipment that seemed determined to stop working at the worst possible moments. Choi Min-ho could be heard having a philosophical discussion with their power generator about the nature of electrical current and why it insisted on flowing in directions that made no sense. Furthermore, the universal translator announced as Minho creative engineering commentary filled the air. This power generation device appears to have developed opinions about its own function that differ significantly from its original design specifications. The Emperor was beginning to develop a theory about these humans. They seemed to treat everything in their lives with the same casual directness, whether they were speaking to emperors fighting with machinery or trying to sell rocks to the ruler of the galaxy. This was either the most honest species he had ever encountered or the most obliviously inappropriate. Captain Li Dongwu was starting to feel uncomfortable about the whole situation. The fancy ship had been talking to them for quite a while now, and more aliens kept appearing on the screen, looking shocked and taking notes. This was not how normal space encounters usually went, he said slowly, while scratching his head in confusion. You guys are not space police, are you? Because if you are, we have most of our permits and licenses, and the few we are missing are probably not. That important? Anyway, we are the Galactic Throne, replied Emperor Veltorin with as much dignity as he could manage given the circumstances. This is first contact between your species and galactic civilization. We represent the Central Authority. For over 300 worlds and countless civilizations, the human bridge fell completely silent. 12 pairs of human eyes stared at the screen in growing horror as the full magnitude of their situation began to dawn on them. They had just introduced humanity to the galaxy while wearing dirty clothes, complaining about broken toilets, fighting with machinery, and trying to sell space rocks to an emperor. Oh, whispered Park. So Jin, in a voice so quiet, it was barely picked up by their communication system. We are so very dead. Captain Dongwu felt his stomach drop to somewhere around his ankles as he realized what had just happened. His crew had made first contact with galactic civilization while acting like a group of space hobos who had never heard of proper behavior. The implications were staggering. So when you said you were an emperor, Dongwu said carefully, you meant like an actual emperor of actual alien civilizations and not just someone with a really nice ship and delusions of grandeur. Emperor Vel. Tehran nodded solemnly, while his skin shifted to a shade of blue that indicated profound philosophical contemplation. I rule over 300 star systems command fleets that could destroy planets and am responsible for maintaining peace between civilizations that have existed since before your sun was formed. Kim Tai-ho was still holding his bottle of soju and now looked like he wanted to drink all of it at once. So when I offered you alcohol just now, that was probably not appropriate diplomatic protocol, was it? The emperor considered this question seriously. In most civilizations, offering intoxicating beverages to a ruler without proper ceremony would result in immediate imprisonment or exile. However, your offer seemed to come from genuine hospitality rather than malicious intent. Li Su-min chose that moment to reappear on camera, still wearing only her underwear and tool belt, but now also covered in what appeared to be coolant fluid from their life support systems. She looked around at everyone's serious expressions and immediately sensed that something important was happening. Did I miss something, she asked, while wiping her hands on a rag that was somehow dirtier than her hands had been. We finally figure out who these people are. They are the Galactic Government. Dongwu explained in the voice of someone who was still processing this information, and we just made first contact while you were wearing underwear and wrestling with our air conditioning. Su-min looked down at her current state of undress, then back at the screen full of elaborately dressed aliens. Oh, she said thoughtfully. That is probably not good, is it? The Emperor, despite everything, found himself oddly impressed. By these remarkable beings, they had managed to survive in deep space using equipment that barely functioned. They had maintained their sense of humor despite obvious hardships, and they had treated him with honest directness, rather than false flattery. Humans, he announced to his court, will require very careful study. They appear to be simultaneously the most honest and most inappropriate species we have ever encountered. The peace treaty delegation was still taking notes because they had just witnessed what would become the most studied first contact in galactic history. These humans had violated every rule of diplomatic protocol while somehow managing to be genuinely likable in their complete lack of pretense. Your Majesty suggested the royal advisor, perhaps we should invite them to the peace conference as observers. They could provide a unique perspective on interspecies relations. The military advisor looked horrified. Absolutely not, he declared. They would probably try to sell decorative rocks to the warring empires and ask if anyone wanted to share drinks. Actually mused the emperor that might not be such a bad idea. The moment of ultimate shame arrived when Chief Engineer Yang Ho-seok made his grand entrance onto the bridge. Ho-seok had been enjoying what he considered a well-deserved nap after winning a particularly successful poker game against the maintenance robots. He had been sleeping in his bunk for the past 6 hours and woke up only because the noise from everyone talking had finally penetrated his dreams. Ho-seok stumbled onto the bridge wearing nothing but his lucky underwear, which featured cartoon characters that had been popular on Earth about 20 years ago, and a confused expression that suggested his brain was still trying to figure out what century it was. His hair was sticking up in directions that seemed to defy several laws of physics, and he had pillow marks on his face that looked like ancient writing. "What is all the noise about?" he mumbled while scratching places that definitely should not be scratched while on camera. "Some of us are trying to get our beauty sleep here, and trust me, I need all the beauty sleep I can get." He squinted at the massive royal ship displayed on their main screen and let out a low whistle of appreciation. "Wow, that is one fancy ride," he said, while still scratching inappropriate places. "Must be nice to have that kind of money. Our ship barely qualifies as space-worthy. Half our systems are held together with hope, stubbornness, and really strong prayers." The emperor and his entire court watched in fascinated horror as this nearly naked human casually dismissed their finest technological achievement while openly admitting that his own vessel was essentially a flying disaster waiting to happen. But Ho-seok was nowhere near finished sharing humanity. "Most embarrassing secrets, you know what our biggest problem is," he continued, apparently deciding that the Emperor of the Galaxy needed to know about their daily struggles. "The toilet has been broken for 3 weeks now, and we have been taking turns with a bucket. It is not exactly dignified, but what else can you do when you are stuck in the middle of nowhere with equipment that was probably junk when our grandparents were young?" The universal translator dutifully converted this information into the most formal royal language possible. "Our waste disposal ceremonies have been reduced to primitive rituals involving simple containers, thus testing our species' remarkable adaptability and commitment to survival under adverse conditions." The royal court sat in stunned silence. As they processed this revelation, these humans had just admitted that their most basic life support systems had failed, and they were dealing with the situation by using a bucket. The casual way Ho-seok described this situation suggested that this was normal for them. "And that is not even the worst part," Ho-seok continued, while apparently deciding that full disclosure was the best policy. "Our food processor broke down last month, so we have been eating nothing but canned mystery meat and instant noodles. I think the mystery meat might actually be older than some of our crew members, but hey, protein is protein. Right. Moreover," the translator announced solemnly, "our nutritional intake has been adapted to consist primarily of preserved organic matter of uncertain origin and rapidly prepared grain.